Sport had always just been sport. The game had just been the game. The look of sport had always just been the look of sport. Until it wasn't anymore. There was a moment on the timeline of modern sport when everything changed. A few talented and passionate designers were brought together with one mission: to change the look, feel, and performance of sport forever. What started as a ripple in the early 1990s has served as the catalyst for the international revolution in sports branding, uniform design, and performance innovation that continues to accelerate today. This is the origin story of Nike Team Sports, as told by the designers, creators, and innovators who made it happen. This is The Designesty.
Hey there, welcome to The Designesty. This is the stories of the design dynasty that was Nike Team Sports from 1993 to 1998, told by those who were there and made it happen. I'm your host, Ken Black. I was one of those founders. And today we have another round with an amazing guest who is also one of those original founders, Keith Houlemard. We talked about Keith's background in a previous episode, but for a quick refresh, he was a 30-plus year Nike OG, founder of organized team sports, Nike Team Sports. He was the head of Apparel for Nike Basketball and Jordan. He became the Jordan brand president, was a vice president and GM of multiple Olympic Games, head of all running business in Europe. So he has a long, storied history and career at Nike that was amazing. But today, we're going to talk about our experience working on Jordan together. What you're going to hear in this episode is us talking about the two collections that we worked on first, which were the Air Jordan 11 and the Air Jordan 12, footwear and apparel. We'll talk about our experience of working with Michael directly. You'll hear us speak of the influence of the relationship and the impact of Tinker Hatfield, the GOAT of footwear design. We get into product details. We talk about some of the insights that went into not only design, but the design decisions and the details that appear in those products. And ultimately, we get into the transition of Air Jordan into Brand Jordan, a division at Nike. If you find this interesting, the videos, the other images, and product details that we talk about here will be posted over on our Substack page so you can go even deeper. In the meantime, enjoy this conversation with Keith.
Starting with the shorts. I saw a thing on social media the other day. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent, but I saw a thing on social media the other day. And it was a father talking about his son. And he said, yeah, we're out there. Back in the day, we wore basketball shorts every day. If we rolled up on a court, I would just pop my jeans off. And so he and his son were driving up to a court and he said, let's go play. Kid said, I can't. I don't have my shorts on. And he said, what's the world come to when a young 19-year-old or 18-year-old isn't always ready to ball, isn't ready to go to any court? And I think that was the culture of basketball apparel and in that day, and the consumer was, you had basketball shorts on 365, 24/7.
Yep.
MJ started that, and we think about bridging over to MJ. MJ started that with his Carolina shorts under his uniform that we learned about back in the day, that every day he played for the Bulls, every game he played, he had his Carolina practice shorts on under his Bulls shorts, and he kind of started that vibe.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump to Jordan.
Sounds great.
We had such a cool time together. Like think about it. I think Air Jordan 11 is hitting 30 years, right? Didn't it just hit 30?
Wow, I should know that.
That was the first one. So 95, I think the release was 95. MJ wore the Air Jordan 11 in the 95 playoffs. And then
it released in the 95-96 season.
Yeah, 95-96 season. But in between, he wore them in Space Jam. So that's how the AJ11s made it Space Jam.
That's right.
But so for us, we were so we had started team sports. We're doing the basketball thing. What do you remember about? Because I was trying to remember, how did Nike basketball and Jordan get thrown into our mix? Because that was over in inline apparel while we were doing all the college stuff, right?
Yeah, it was a classic big company reorg. And Nike was always great at it through the years of saying, how can we find a way to relook at this organization so that as a fresh kind of look. So really quick, historically, I was the basketball apparel PLM. We started OTS together, and I went over and, I should remember her. She was one of my favorite people. Her first name was Anne, and she came over from T-shirts, and they had Anne do Nike basketball. And then they had one of those reorgs, and the reorg was the spirit of, why don't we have basketball all in one place? Because I think the work we had done over in the OTS world had given confidence that we had command of basketball. So what happened then was they went through another reorg. Basketball came over, and all at once, and I remember it was a pretty profound year because we signed a China NBA deal. We brought Nike basketball back in-house. Jordan was really small because he had retired. And then we had OTS. So we had these multiple arms of basketball, and the company decided to manage it kind of all within one.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. You say he retired. I remember I have just, and I don't know if it's fictional or what, our memories are not reliable, but I swear I have this memory of you and Janet and I in New York. I think we'd gone out on like an inspiration trip or something. And in a cab, we're in Midtown. We're just about to get out of a cab. And on the radio, they announced that MJ retired. Because I remember getting out of that cab. You and Janet got out on one side, on the sidewalk side. I got out on the other side and looking over the top. And we were like, we just started working on like, what the, like, we were just given the Jordan stuff. Are we done? Like, what's the deal? Do you remember?
I don't remember it that way. Here's how I remember it. When he retired, I think what I thought what happened was that trip to New York is when he announced he was coming back. When he retired, I remember we were working on a bunch of things. And if you remember, Tinker was playing around with Jordan Beyond. And I think the company went through a pause, like, what are we going to do with Jordan? What are we going to do with Jordan? And then we decided to bring it back. And so we decided to bring it back. And that's when the 11 was designed, et cetera. And we made the trip to Arizona when he was playing baseball and so on. And then he announced that he was coming back to basketball. And so then all the work we were doing on that Jordan 11 collection became super real because now he's coming back. He's going to play. This isn't just a little mini premium collection. He's going to be back on the court.
Right. Okay. That makes perfect sense. I think your version is right. I just remember that there was a moment of like, holy shit, things just changed, right? We've been working on it. And we would have, when do you think that trip to Scottsdale would have been? Because I think I sent you to, I have some bad footage of us down there, right?
It's beautiful.
When would that have been?
I believe it was the summer. I'm sorry, it was the first spring because he was playing spring ball. I don't think they played in Arizona in the 100-degree weather. So it was spring training in the year after he retired. And I should have that note, but I don't remember the first year that Michael retired. But essentially the first spring, he was really into it. He was like working on his baseball game and et cetera. And he was happy that Tinker was really fighting the good fight. And I have to give Tinker a lot of credit because he was constantly fighting the fight of this guy's, one of one. How could we not be doing anything? Yeah. Of course we're going to do it. There's always people in corporate America who's like, well, he's retired. He's done now. Yeah. So between Tinker Hatfield and Howard White and a few others of us who had the blessing of being in those situations, we're pushing for it. Yeah. But Tinker and H at the highest levels. Yeah,
that's cool. That was a special trip down there to Scottsdale. I remember what I'll give as it relates to Tinker. I remember having this was a giant light bulb moment for me at Nike, which is having a breakfast with Tinker at the hotel before we were heading over to see MJ. And he said basically to the effect, he said, we're not designing a shoe for Michael. We're creating the story of Michael in the shape of a shoe. And I was like,
wow.
Like that, changes everything I think about anything I might ever design for the rest of my life, right? Which was pretty
Right.
powerful. And I was at a sneaker event actually here in Portland the other night, and there were all these guys came in from all over, and we were talking about the 11 because the 11 always gets a ton of love, of course.
Yep.
I actually have this booklet. Do you remember this? This was a promo book.
Oh
for
yeah,
the
absolutely.
press kit,
Yes.
right? And it has all the branding
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Here's something
I
I would
think I
love
might
to.
still have one of those.
Oh, okay, hang on to it, man. It's a beautiful one. So here's something I would love to talk to you about. What do you recall? Let's talk about the shoe for a minute. And let's talk about the apparel. But
Yep.
okay, see the collar on that shoe.
Yep.
So it's got a wrap, right? Do you remember those early? Sorry, not doing it very well here.
Yes.
The early versions that Tinker had did not have a tongue. It had like a clamshell
Yes.
kind of a wrap.
Right. It overlapped. It wrapped
Yeah.
over, and then the laces went. And I remember Tinker saying something to the tune of he wanted to reduce the pressure Michael felt on the top by not having as much overlap between
Yeah.
those two.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. I'd love to remember why, but I think it was
Yep.
in the execution of it. It just didn't work when he sent some to MJ
Yeah.
and to the wear testers, which you have
Yep.
to give Nike credit for the extensive wear testing.
Yeah.
The other thing I remember about that shoe,
go.
sorry if I'm taking you off
No,
track,
go, do it.
is the lawnmower being the inspiration. So
What?
Tinker went to Outdoor Retailer Show. I remember the first
Yeah.
time he showed this, MJ came out to campus. And he had gone to Outdoor Retailer, and he saw these new modern lawnmowers, and they were shiny on the bottom and kind of a matte finish
Yeah.
up above around the engine. And he was inspired by that. And then he went to MJ, who had always said he wanted a dress shoe
Yeah.
as a shoe, and said, I thought about this contrast between shiny and matte. And so it was both this visual thing. And then if you remember, MJ had foot problems back in those days. So this was the first one that put that 3/4 length plate in for stability. And I mean, to this day and to many years after, people would say the best performing basketball shoe and best looking. And I think it's why that shoe got GOAT status, because it wasn't just a bunch of frivolous things. It all had this deeper purpose and meaning.
It felt great to play in. Here, I'm going to show you another picture here. So from that video that I referenced, Huli, can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
So this is that clip. So in the video, and we'll post this for sure. And I've also got a great shot in here, Keith, of you in front of all the boards, because we presented on boards with marker cutouts, right, back then in the day. But what this is just a quick flash over. What was going on here? What do you remember about that? I saw Tinker the other night, by the way. He was at that deal, and briefly we had a hug and talked about it. I'm like, hey, I got some questions for you on the 11, so I'm going to get this from him at some point. But what do you remember about those laces? This had to be a very early version, right?
They weren't laces, and the way I remember it, again, Tinker had gone to this Outdoor Retailer Show, and he saw these backpacks with these clips on them. So he asked for these straps to be kind of developed, and it would be a closing system that would lock MJ in and lock the foot in. And so is this concept of, I just remember how excited he was coming back from Outdoor Retailer, and he talked a lot about the things he had seen, and he wanted to bring some of this industrial things into a basketball shoe.
I love that. You can completely see right here how the bottom, like the patent leather at the bottom, it's got a little bit of a flaw there in the toe, but you can see how the bottom is coming together, and he's really trying to figure out what that soft matte upper is going to look and work like, which is super really cool. Dude, I hadn't remembered any of that, so thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. So here's what I did remember, and I talked about with the guys. So the other piece on that is you look at, remember the lace, what do you want to do with the laces right there?
Yep.
See the JORDAN?
Yeah, you don't have to remind me. I remember that so distinctly.
So on the graphic side, so he's like, hey, I need type, I need stuff for doing this, because that was kind of my piece. And he wanted desperately to put those letters there, but we couldn't figure out how to do it, because back then to do woven wouldn't really work with the strap the way he was. We couldn't have done silicone, like, again, 1994 we were developing this for 95.
Yeah.
And so that's what led to the decision to do this. That's why we went with the super low profile type,
Right.
right? Which set all that up. Now, the other interesting thing, because I know what I recall, but I'm curious about your point. So where we did this tab, this label across the forefoot. So from a graphic design standpoint, and then I want to ask you about the content of it. I do remember talking with Tinker, and the way he set up the shoe to have the laces, so they're creating these windows as opposed to crosshatch, which covers everything up. One, when he was first doing the collar that wrapped, there would be no tongue. So we couldn't put a typical graphic right here. But the fact that these created these just really awesome windows made it a place for us to put a graphic. Also, when you said tuxedo, dress formal, you got tie bar, you have kind of details that you add, pocket square, whatever. Felt like something we could do that dressed it up. And also when you look down with your pants are covering it, right?
Yep.
You still see the graphics. So that's one thing that led us to that solution. But talk me through this. So the Jumpman Jordan, right? We had both of them because we had the limitation. So I'd love your perspective on how we were thinking about that relationship between Jumpman, Jordan, why we were there.
The way I recall, so as we said, we had this idea that maybe Jordan could be a brand and it would be more than just a shoe. And so the conversations that I was and we were part of is to create a communication system that didn't use Nike anywhere and develop Jordan as the brand with the Jumpman as the logo. And so as I recall that brief being, this is now Nike will not show up anywhere on this shoe. And I believe it had not shown up on previous shoes, but this was a distinct effort to start building the brand. So as we were sitting there putting effort into building the brand, the other thing I recall is, and you did a great job of it, is it was a fight. I mean, yeah, in the mid 90s, 94 to forever, thinking about apparel when creating a shoe was actually a novelty at that point. And one of the things that I remember with a lot of passion was fighting, but losing the fight for the really low profile Jumpman on going up the shoe. And it was just one of those, can't do it, that we ended up creating one. It was just a few years ago that actually had your OG low profile. And people were uncomfortable with it. They said, it's hard to read. Yep. And I just remember really distinctly how we thought that made it even cooler, that it was less obvious, that we had a taller version and a low profile version, and it just gave us so many options. I also know that you were the kind of OTS premier graphic designer. So at that time, doing woven labels for authenticity was also something that we focused on. And we put that, I believe it was inside the tongue and on the apparel. Yeah. But it was just work getting all that stuff to work together. But I would say we had amazing success, and the apparel collection that went with it was extraordinary. There it is.
So that's the guy.
I can't read it on the screen, but I want to say quality inspired by the greatest player ever.
Exactly.
Like that. I can't read it, but okay.
Yeah. Quality basketball products inspired by the greatest player ever.
Yep.
And that's what I talked to the dudes about this last week as well, which is just changing the words inspired by, because we were in that window when Michael was out of the game for a minute.
Right.
When you're talking about the low profile thing too, which is, so here's two things I remember. At this point in time, the reason we didn't go Jordan on the apparel too is we didn't own Jordan.
Great call. Great point.
So we had to come up with something else. And so this was our way, to your point, to bridge how do we get to a brand, but we don't have one name. So how do we double up? And if we only have Jordan on the shoe and not Jumpman, then we don't have a connect, which is why this little guy. What also is fun is two little anecdotes about the type that's hard to read. I remember specifically being in a design review. You must have been in that review. Mm-hmm. Having a board, and I won't name the exact. I won't name the exact. But end of the table, the biggest guy in the room going, "Oh, I don't get it. I can't read it. I don't. Why would we? I can't read it. And having that deal of like, you know what, talking through everything, and then the fact that it's kind of a code could make it even more cool, especially when you turn it on the side. Now this is going to age me, which also implicates you because we're in the same boat here. At this sneaker thing, there was I'll call him a kid, mid-30s, who came up, started talking about this, and he's like, that identity system and the fact that it was super low profile, and when you turn it on your side, it looked like alien code. But then when he's like, that's what made me want to be a graphic designer.
Wow.
He's like, because it was this embedded story. It had this really unique way of looking at stuff. And so, just in the annals of, we were just kids trying to figure stuff out. And if somebody would see it as a code, who really knows?
Right.
But to your point, go for what you believe in, which was cool, which is fun to see. Anyway,
you know what's great about the long-term effects of that is not only did we bring it back to the shoe because people gained appreciation for it over the years, and it wasn't kind of a I don't want to call him a knucklehead, but a knucklehead in the room that was like needed it to feel more literal, I think is what they wanted. Was what became a major character of Jordan was inside knowledge and language. And when Smitty started doing a lot of his kind of graphic tapestries with all the messages and words and hidden things in there, it became part of the character of the brand that kind of went on kind of year after year. And I think that creates the lore of those kind of amazing times of Jordan in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, totally. I want to show you one more. I want to get one more thing in here. Here's the shot. I love this shot. Flashback, dude.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Two things. One, so the folks that were there in that deal. So I remember it was you, Dan DeHaven, who's a footwear developer, Tinker, obviously, H, you, me, Janet Nickel. Rupee was there. Peter was there.
Probably Rupee and Bond.
Rupee was definitely there. Yeah. But the background here too is from an apparel standpoint. So Tinker's coming in with all these shoes, and we're coming in with boards. These are hand marker comped boards that we're literally hand carrying to Scottsdale with all of these fabric swatches, which was interesting. Talk about for a minute like, how much do you remember? Do you remember this session, by the way? And was this your first interaction with Michael, by the way?
No, I have this, like, not a super long interaction, but I would say this is somewhere around maybe 10th or 12th at that point. I got a chance to meet him when I was in Eakin at the launch of a shoe. And then later on, he came out to campus for a shoot. And this was probably because I was a PLM in 93. So there were 3 or 4 different collections that we had with him. So maybe not 9 or 10th, but it was early. And this was 94. I sort of just was doing some mental math. He retired just before the 93-94 season. So, so this was like 6 months later. So I hadn't had that many.
So as a product guy, your experience with Michael as far as understanding what he wanted, and even like you're holding fabrics here. I remember we brought him a bunch of fabrics to kind of choose from, and he was always on it to me, but you had much more kind of close interaction over time with him. I'm just curious your impression of Michael's product sensibility.
Yeah, evolving. And I might even say it this way, but not as an insult, just as a reality, because I'm the same way. I might also call it devolving. Michael had a great sense. He had a great sense for what he wanted. He was very tactile. So if you didn't bring the fabric or didn't bring a few things in his size that he could put on and see what they looked like to him on the body.
Yep.
But at that point, he was really good because Michael in his early 30s he just had a great sense about him, and he knew exactly what he liked. The only reason I say devolving is because what Michael liked at 40 had a much bigger gap from what the 18-year-old liked at 40. When Michael was 30, he could lead the 18-year-old down I like it like this. I want it to fall off my shoulders. Yeah, give me that color. I do this and I do that, and I wear the Carolina shorts and I wear them a little bit longer, and I fold my socks over just like this, and I do this and I do that. However, when he became 40 and suit wearing Michael and the NBA was overtaken by Allen Iverson, etc., it became a lot harder to say, do you like it or not? And it became an exercise in be sure you have MJ's samples for him and be sure you have the stuff he likes. But it became an education. It became, we would start off and say, here's what's happening. And by we, I mean myself and or the designer, be it, Janet or Wynn or Claire, to tell Michael a story at the start of what's happening in fashion. And then it was actually harder work for us than it was for the sneaker guys, because we would fuse what Michael likes with what's happening in current fashion. So felt like that was work, but he was always the inspiration point. But it's, again, like all of us age. If somebody comes and asks me what I like now, I'm either reflecting something I've seen out there and I'm a late adopter, or I'm reflecting something that I thought was cool 20 years ago when I might have been cool. Yeah. But anyway, so I think that's been the thing about apparel, where footwear, I think, really had some great insights, especially during the years that he was playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. What about let's talk about the 12, because that was the second one we worked on together.
Yep.
11 and 12 is actually, I love it's a pretty good 1-2 punch when you even talk about footwear, right? Special kind of window of time. That would have been, I think it was released November 96. Michael wore it in the flu game. Mm-hmm. It was a shoe he was wearing in the Frozen Moment spot, which I know is also one of the most kind of iconic Jordan spots. Help me remember what your thoughts were, or what you remember about the early moments of that shoe and that line.
The biggest thing that I remember, especially about the shoe and the designs, was we would get so much from Tinker's very first MJ presentation. Yeah. And Tinker was so, I don't want to say secretive, but he would almost be in hiding and you wouldn't know what he was going to show up with. And you would always get a little bit of a hint on what Tinker was wearing to the meeting, and then Michael would make fun of him. So I say that to say what I remember really strongly around the 12 was how inspired by Japan he was. Even some of the designs, which we later found we couldn't use legally, he was inspired by, I think it was a sun logo that came from Japan. And that created I think it's baffling on the side of the shoe. Mm-hmm. So it was really that. And then it was evolving this dress look from the 11 into something that was similar. And I remember he talked about some asymmetry. Yep. And really being inspired by Japan. And I wish I could remember the funky Japanese jacket that Tinker wore to the meeting. Uh-huh. But those are the things that I really remember, because from an apparel and a collection standpoint, the next thing we would have to do is say, all right, it's got to go with that, because that was absolutely the icon, and the magnet is what Tinker was doing with the shoe.
Yeah, that was cool. We on the graphic side, I remember the inspiration too was when he and I talked, the evolution of this guy here just felt great, using the tongue differently. And so that's why on the 12 we did the 2-3. So even the asymmetry, like you said, the asymmetry, the different kind of language, instead of just doing a 23 TWO number 3, was another way to kind of mix that up, and having that also fit within the laces in the kind of the same way just felt like a more interesting solution. We extended also, you're right, the era of the OTS patch designer. If we did one for the last one, might as well do one for this one, which is
but the pull tab was brilliant. Yeah.
The pull tab, because that's what he also wanted, was something that came from underneath and appeared to go right up into that loop. And so same thing. If you look at the shoe, the one thing I always hated about the back of that, that I wasn't happy with, I'll just say this. We were still doing the Jumpman Jordan thing.
Yep.
And so the apparel version had the right length that fit in really well with the square of Jordan. And the reason it was that long one with the Jordan and the square is because it was made to go up the back of the shoe.
Right.
So type, and then the top of the pull tab is actually the square that holds the Jumpman in it, right? But on the shoe, the box around where it said Jordan instead of Jumpman was just a little too big. I'm not sure what happened, but it fits Jumpman perfectly. But on that shoe, that's, you look at stuff, designers, that's why I don't have a tattoo, because I know I'd be looking at it going, oh my gosh, that corner is a little,
Either that or you have 100 of them.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I remember those as the influence. One thing that in both the 11 and 12 collections, I also think, and you were kind of the brain power behind shooting shirts. That was a key element in both of those apparel lines too.
Absolutely.
I remember the one for the 11 had the yoke, right? The lines that coming down, or the tees. Wait, Jen had those great lines that when the shot of MJ looking from the side, and it had the color block with just the trim coming down the back. I think on the 12, didn't we have am I crazy? Or wasn't that a similar?
I wish I could recall it. The one with the 11 was classic, and I think I remember it well because that was, I still have it. I have it framed somewhere. It was the first photo MJ and I took together, and he's got on the 11, the shooting shirt from the 11. So I recall that super well, but the 12, I'm stuck. Too many years.
Interesting. All right. Okay. We're about to kick into other years beyond that, because this is, I think after this, I was doing more football stuff. I was just kind of crossing over doing basketball, football, a lot of other stuff. You were still doing this, and then I had gone on to do the Olympic stuff. But I was talking to, do you know who Toussaint King is? He's a designer with Jordan now.
Yep.
I was talking to him the other night, and he asked a really interesting question that I would love to get your take on. When do you believe brand Jordan became brand Jordan? When did it go from truly it was we're making shoes and we have an apparel line with it to this is a freaking thing, like it's its own thing? What's your take on that?
I think when we consciously organized for it, from a consumer standpoint, I think it was when the 11 hit the market. But I think when we consciously organized for it, we started in 97 and organized for it in 98. And Nike decided it was going to have this thing called CBUs. And I hope this is interesting, but Nike said we're going to have category business units.
Yep.
We were in the process, I think, of signing Tiger. So we had golf. MJ was back and kind of ruling the sports world. So was Jordan. And then it was ACG. And that was a big moment for me in my career because I sort of shrunk my job down in order to grow scope and power. Not power, scope and influence, so that I would be able to have more, not just be a cog in a wheel. Jordan Apparel had shrunk down to $6 million when he retired. And so we took it from 6 and grew it from there when we formed the brand. But literally we said, this is the Jordan design team and the Jordan development team, and we're going to all sit together. And we had Mary Slayton as head of marketing and, go down the list, Riley and Gentry running footwear, and myself and Hans doing apparel. And of course, Larry Miller running it. We ended up saying we had, ops and finance and all of that. By doing that organizationally, it allowed us to really focus on what's our marketing stories, what's our retail stories, and then the product out there, we could confidently say, this is a brand. The other thing from a world out there, we went and got Eddie Jones, Ray Allen, Vin Baker, as I recall it, officially wearing, not just coincidentally wearing Jordan shoes. So we called it Team Jordan. So by having people beyond Michael wear the shoes, we're setting it up for his retirement.
And that was like 97, you're saying?
97, yeah. 98 officially. We had a launch in New York at New York Nike Town. And I believe that happened around early 98. And then we moved in together. I know it was in the Jerry Rice building in 98. So in that period of time, we did it internally, but it allowed us to really tell the world externally by the athletes we signed and what we were doing, that we were serious about Jordan being a brand within, at that point, within basketball. We would always talk then, man. It was so much fun. Oh, we should do more than basketball. And, H. White was leading those conversations. And at Nike, it was just always, can you get enough resources and can you make it make sense? And I think the brand's done a fantastic job of making it make a ton of sense nowadays.
Yeah. How about that? So it sounds like you're kind of in the same place that I was given Toussaint, the same deal, which is I kind of referred to the 11 and 12 as the bridge to what would be the brand, right? Even the language of, again, inspired by the greatest player ever.
Yep. The first shoe, which I want to say was executed by the brand and potentially even not, I don't remember if it was done by Tinker, was kind of in that 14, 15, were really when it was tough. We had a moment. I think it was with the 15. It was one of those, unbelievable moments. And if you ever can get Larry on here, he'll tell you the story. The head of Nike at the time, or the president of the brand at the time, and we'll let them be named, called us in a room and was like, "You guys, I don't know what you guys are doing. He's not playing anymore. You're doing this many shoes. Why don't we just, license the apparel, shrink it on down, just do one shoe and let Foot Locker be the distribution." And like we had this big, 5 o'clock on the 4th floor of McEnroe meetings, and it was a come to Jesus meeting. Hey, what are you doing? Wow. And we went back and we said, we're not doing that. We're going to make this thing great. Yeah. We got the great advertising with Mary J. Blige singing I think the Umi Says song, the Most Def cut, and it was amazing advertising. We focused everything together. And that moment, because we were really struggling, that moment, the fact that we didn't listen to what was kind of you guys should just do this. And I don't know if that was motivation. I don't know if that was motivation or one of those really wanted to shut it down, but it worked. And that shoe sold, the apparel sold, and it was like a whole new day.
Here we go.
One last thing that I think the other kind of high watermark was signing Roy Jones Jr. and having someone who was not a basketball player. Yeah. Roy Jones Jr. and my friend Mike Phillips, having people who were representing the brand who weren't basketball players, meant a whole lot.
That's super cool, Keith. And I didn't have all of this perspective, which is so fun to hear. I will say, you remember that I took a trip out with Peter Rupi to Chicago. We were talking about doing the apparel thing, and then our boss in OTS was like, "No, Ken, you can't do that."
Right.
I'm not a believer in regrets. I would share this with you. I'm not a believer in regrets, but every now and then you're like, "Oh shit, I should have done that." The fun anecdote on that meeting for me is, so we met. Peter and I just went to Chicago sat with MJ in his office and had a conversation about how do we get after the apparel, whatever. While we're talking, Michael reaches to the front of his desk and lifts the lid on a humidor and takes out a cigar and leans back and he spins it around like, "You guys want a cigar?" And like, I'm being a good, like, I'm on the job, man. It's like I'm a cop. I'm working. I can't have a beer while I'm working. But I passed him. It was like, dude, you don't. Michael Jordan offers you a cigar. You take the freaking cigar. So, but anyway, yeah. So I know that was in there somewhere after the 12, but then you guys took it and like really rolled, which is amazing. So when did you what was your stint as president of Brand Jordan? Like what were the years, what were the shoes that you were doing that, and what are some highlights in that part of the story?
It was a really, really interesting time because it was such a transition. I took over right after the 23.
Okay.
And the 23 was meaningful.
Yeah.
And there was all this conversation. So I was basically, I'll call it 24. So for 4 years, 24, 5, 6, 7. But we didn't call him that. And I was trying, successfully or not, I was trying to go, let's lock down. Let's make 23 the legacy. We did 23 shoes and then we stopped. And let's call the next one the Air Jordan 09. And it was tough. We didn't have a design that we loved. And brilliant designer worked on it. Jason Maiden did it, and he did brilliant design work, but it was tough because we didn't know what to do with Michael not playing. And so the meat that you had to pull from was thin.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just pulling from this inspiration from his life and you didn't have him playing in it. So I felt really strong, like no more numbers. Let's go. Oh nine and those 23 will forever be the legacy.
How about
And we'll
that?
just treat those super special. So the 23 and effectively 24, they were okay shoes. Where it really got cool and some of the things we were able to do was when we had the Air Jordan 25, and of course people love the round numbers, and that's when Smitty is creative and Tinker came back and like we're going to go back. We're not going to call it the 2010 let's just call it, let's go back to the numbers. And I forgot what year that happened.
Yeah.
It didn't last long. But what we were able to do is really like start expanding the players and return the Air Jordan to high performance status. And that came with the opportunity to get Dwayne Wade as part of the brand. So when we found out Dwayne Wade and Converse was struggling and Converse didn't have great performance shoes, and Dwayne's a not an easy athlete. Like he can't just throw a custom shoe and he had foot issues, etc. And so we wanted to bring Dwayne over, and we brought him over to be the headliner of the brand.
Remember that?
And what we said was, you be the guy who wears the Air Jordan. You are the guy. You're going to take the Air Jordan to the next level. And that really, really helped us. The challenge, and this is one of those things that when you look back on it in life, you go, I was right and I was wrong.
Yep.
And what it was we also expanded our signature athletes. We had Melo, CP, and Dwayne. But over time, if you're Dwayne, you want your own signature shoe. And then who we want to sign and what we want to do really, really has to focus on athletes need signature shoes.
Yep.
Now, tell everybody out there, the model of signature shoes doesn't pay off for companies. And so since we were running a pretty tight financial ship to do a signature shoe and you pay them royalties, you split the royalty with MJ, then you have to pay for marketing and you do all that stuff. It's just not a good math equation. You know what? The sneaker business isn't a math equation. The sneaker business is emotion and belief, and I want to be like that player and the pride of it and all of that. So Dwayne wanted a signature shoe, which we gave Dwayne. So then we had Dwayne, CP, and Melo all getting signature shoes, which were all great, great players. But now you got 3 signature shoe people that you got to market. You have to do all that. So about year 3.5, I sort of let down that guard and was like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's just do it no matter how many pair and what it is, because it gives us design inspiration and innovation and an approach to bring something new and different. So in that, right before I left, which I can't take sports marketing credit, but I'll take strategic credit for, we kind of wrote the plan for Dwayne. We're going to offer him X amount, but he went and signed with, I think, Li Ning for an ungodly amount of money. And we took that money and said, let's get a couple of young athletic studs in, and we brought in Russell Westbrook and Blake Griffin. So bringing those 2 guys really refreshed Jordan's signature, really refreshed the basketball business, gave a whole newfound belief because CP and Melo had been around for a long time. So that part was part of the plan. Going into women's was part of the plan. And then going into football, we had just started with North Carolina when I left. So where I feel like when Larry came back into the job, so I was there by the way, for the point of the audience, I was president from 2008 to 2012, almost 4.5 years. We started because we had to reset the brand after, classic, you oversupply the market. But bringing Russell, Blake, redoing a few things, truly getting committed into other sports like football and women's, were all part of the 3-year plan that we wrote right before I left. And my last 2 quarters, we had double-digit growth. And it actually started I'm going to make the number up, but I'm pretty sure sitting in all the QBRs over the years, it was 18 straight months of double-digit growth that Jordan went. So the first 2 were my last 2 quarters, and then the rest of them, Larry led through. and it's kind of took Jordan to where it is today.
Set it up for them to take the lid off and let it become what it
Yeah, I think it's
was
great.
meant to become. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey Keith, what's something as you look back over the years, specifically related to the Jordan stuff, kind of, I guess, starting with when we messed around with the 11 and then the 12 and then into this later experience. Give me a thing or two that you learned.
Wow, that's tough to narrow down to one or two. I just gave you one of them, which was like the sneaker game's not played on paper. It's out there and it's emotional. It's I for all the right reason, I was like, why are we doing all these signature shoes? And then you realize that athletes and stars and relationships matter a ton. The other thing I think I learned that I would say I didn't already know was the need to have conviction in your plans and what you believe. And people like Tinker Hatfield and his ability to push what otherwise is and you know this from a design standpoint. You kind of, I don't know what the right analogy is. You have to break some eggs. You got to get some stuff wrong, but you got to put it out there. And if you put out there what's expected, it's not going to happen. I saw a thing the other day as I was sort of reading up on what the company Apple is going through now. And they have an amazing business person and leader. But there's something to that crazy conviction of let's just go leadership of Steve Jobs. That takes you to a new place. And I would say being thrust into that level of a leadership mode. I'm the type of leader that is that believes in supporting the team and elevating those that work for you. But at the same time, Trevor Edwards used to say, people seek leadership. They sometimes need to be told. And I would say through my years and through my executive years at Nike, having the conviction to tell people they're wrong and then do it this way, it's really hard to do because you can sit on an island. And I think I've learned a great value in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I love it. From what you're saying there too, what comes to me also, whether it's Steve or Tinker or whomever, is being able to see something that other people don't is important as a creator, as a company that wants to innovate. But being able to build the bridge and be articulate enough to help those who don't understand and can't believe go there with you is what I think Jordan, I think Nike, I think all of these things, these are the case studies of that can't be done, or that's not right, or hey, why don't we shut this thing down and you do one shoe and let's give it to Foot Locker, and you're like, how about if we double down and bring in more players and like, let's roll, is in some ways nonsensical, but that is the beauty of seeing something and having enough belief to not be afraid of the potential that it could be a massive crash and burn.
Yep.
Right? Because in the face of headwinds, you're going, no. We're going to double down. We're going to put more fuel on this fire. We're going to go. Where a lot of people would have folded the tent and gone, okay, I guess I'll get a new job. And so, honestly, and a lot of it is what we went through together and the opportunity to work with Tinker. And what you're saying right now, to me, that is the vision, the belief, and then being able to be articulate enough in ways, what Tinker always did is, let me tell you a story. Let me take you to a place that you weren't a few minutes ago.
Right.
And coming out on the other side, you might believe too, and then we can go do it together.
Brilliant. Well said. I think the sneaker business and the sports world is so driven by that. It's an emotion. And if you underrate the emotion of, a player you love, a play you love, a team you love, it's irrational. And that's what it's all about, is like sometimes that irrationality like takes you to a whole new place.
It's the beauty of it. At least you're going to have amazing stories, if nothing else.
Yes.
which is awesome. I love the stories I've been able to share with you, man. This is great. Super cool.
Fantastic.
Any parting shots on anything else you feel like, anything else that happened in your life with Jordan that you feel like, you know what, it'd be fun for the world to know? Or do you feel like we covered?
Yeah, here my one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently. You know the Jay-Z line, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. Right. Um, Even when you take the word business out, um, greatness impacts so many people. And, I've talked to friends who would say, I hear MJ's an asshole. I'm like, yeah, sometimes. He's human. He's like a real regular dude. He loves to compete. But the thing he has been able to create. So you and I are having this great conversation over a podcast. That's our lives are incredibly impacted by being able to be in that sphere of MJ.
Yeah.
And then you look around at the other folks. I talked to Mark Smith a few months ago, who still does work for him and did some work at the Grove 23. Then I worked in the golf space, and everybody in the golf space talks about the Grove 23. And then all the people in the sport who have wanted to be like Mike. And then all the people, speaking of be like Mike at Gatorade, who were impacted by him, whose lives were enriched because they had, a touch with that greatness or that thing that was unlike any other.
Yeah.
Those people who are one of one, whether it's MJ or a musician or a Barack Obama or a whatever, when you're that, you are absolutely changing the world. And that's a thing H. White talks about all the time, and I think is one of the biggest things that I realize that I've been blessed through my experience at Nike to be able to touch and be part of things that I really almost didn't deserve. And it changed my life, which means it changed my kid's life, which means it changed my wife's life, which means it changed, people tell stories. Like I ran into friends last weekend and they were like, holy, remember the time we went to and you did this and I came to this Nike thing? Their life was impacted because of the blessings that I was able to get. So I would close with something that's like really on my mind recently is just the impact that any one person can have on so many people around them. And you're one of those people.
That's amazing.
I mean, you've had impact on me. You've had impact on you and your family and your design. I thought about it when I saw the Villanova shorts, back to our previous conversation. You've changed the history of that school through you. And I guess Michael Scheibel did that work, but through that design work. And it's actually pretty damn incredible to look back on as a legacy.
It's awesome. How can we not have gratitude for that, right? That's amazing.
Exactly. Yep.
Really, that's awesome. Thank you so much for today and for this this walkthrough. I know there's a lot of cool stuff about Jordan that people are always curious about that I think we gave a peek into today. So
Fun stuff.
Great.
Love chatting with you. Love working with
Thank you, man. All right.
Cheers.
And that wraps another great conversation with Keith Houlemard. I love what he was saying about greatness, that it's special how one person can have such a huge impact on so many. Obviously, he's talking about Michael, but it's the same thing for each one of us. If we are chasing the things that we're made to do and loving it while we're doing it and being good humans with others, being a great teammate, the impact that we can have on each other is profound. And together, we can have a big impact on the world. That's kind of what Designisty is about, a team sports era that was simply 5 years, 1993 to 1998. And yet people who love basketball, who love vintage sport, still talk about those designs and that era today. We were just a bunch of kids doing what we loved, trying to do great things and do right by the sport and the teams and the athletes that we were working with. Good news is we'll have Keith back for future episodes as we talk with other teammates within team sports about stories from basketball. So check out our Substack page or Instagram for more tidbits and insights on the Designisty. And sign up on our Substack page if you want to receive updates on future episodes and additional stories of Nike team sports, things like images, maybe a video of us working with Michael Jordan, stuff like that that you won't hear here in this podcast. Thanks for listening.